The German mechanics who first laid eyes on a captured Allied Jeep during World War II could hardly have anticipated the monumental insight that this single vehicle would provide into the logistical and tactical prowess of the United States military. To them, it was a simple machine, a lightweight, four-wheel drive vehicle, yet it embodied a complex synthesis of engineering ingenuity, mass production efficiency, and battlefield practicality that the Germans had struggled to match despite their own sophisticated automotive industry. The Jeep was not just a car, it was a symbol of an entire industrial nation's ability to mobilize, adapt, and sustain large-scale military operations across two vast continents, Europe and Africa. As they carefully examined the chassis, the drivetrain, and the innovative combination of durability and versatility, the German engineers were struck by the realization that this was not a vehicle built for a single engagement but for a war fought simultaneously on multiple fronts, with different terrains, climates, and operational demands. Each bolt, joint, and lever in the Jeep's design spoke to a philosophy of utility that prioritized simplicity without sacrificing reliability, a principle that allowed the Allies to field an unprecedented number of vehicles with minimal maintenance headaches even in the harshest conditions. The captured Jeep became a lens through which the Germans could gauge not only the technical competence of their opponents but also the strategic foresight that went into equipping an army capable of projecting power across oceans. They noted the efficiency of the production process that allowed the Americans to manufacture hundreds of thousands of these vehicles at astonishing speed, understanding that 640,000 Jeeps were no mere coincidence but the tangible result of a national industrial machine mobilized for total war. It was in this moment, while tracing the stamped serial numbers and inspecting the rugged suspension, that the German mechanics began to comprehend the larger story, a war fought not only by soldiers on the ground but by an industrial ecosystem capable of sustaining a global campaign, from the beaches of Normandy to the deserts of North Africa, from the frozen steppes of Russia to the islands of the Pacific. The Jeep, in its unassuming metal frame, revealed a philosophy of war in which production speed, design adaptability, and logistical foresight were weaponized alongside rifles and artillery, an insight that would profoundly affect German engineering assessments and tactical planning for the remainder of the conflict. They realized that they were not just facing an army but a nation whose capacity to innovate and produce on a massive scale had become an insurmountable advantage, a lesson that would echo in post-war automotive and military thinking for decades to come. As the German mechanics continued their meticulous disassembly and inspection, they marveled at the Jeep's ability to operate in a staggering variety of conditions without frequent breakdowns or complex repairs. Its engine, a compact yet powerful inline-four, had been designed for both reliability and ease of maintenance, reflecting a deep understanding of the practical challenges faced by soldiers in remote or hostile environments. The suspension system, with its simple leaf springs and resilient axles, provided both flexibility and durability, allowing the vehicle to traverse rough terrain with minimal strain on its components. Each design choice was a calculated compromise between performance, cost, and manufacturability, revealing an intricate balance that had been refined through years of iterative engineering and field testing. The Germans realized that the Jeep represented a triumph of practical innovation over technological sophistication, a machine that succeeded not by complexity but by thoughtful simplicity. In this way, the Jeep became a microcosm of the American war effort itself, standardized, efficient, and capable of overwhelming an opponent through sheer volume and adaptability rather than through exceptional individual brilliance. Beyond its mechanical ingenuity, the captured Jeep highlighted the organizational prowess behind its mass production. American factories, coordinated with unprecedented logistical planning, were capable of churning out thousands of vehicles per month, feeding the insatiable demand of multiple theaters of war simultaneously. This revealed to the German engineers the importance of industrial scale as a decisive factor in modern warfare, where the ability to supply, maintain, and replace equipment could determine the outcome of entire campaigns. The figure of 640,000 Jeeps was more than a statistic, it represented a strategic concept realized in metal, a tangible manifestation of industrial power projected across continents. Each vehicle carried with it the implicit knowledge that American forces could sustain mobility, flexibility, and operational endurance in ways that the Germans, despite their engineering prowess, could not easily replicate under the pressures of wartime scarcity and Allied bombing campaigns. The Jeep was thus both a marvel of engineering and a testament to the strategic foresight that underpinned the Allied victory, forcing the German observers to confront a sobering reality: their own technological skill, while impressive, could be rendered moot in the face of an opponent whose logistical and industrial planning was on a scale previously unimaginable. The implications of this realization extended far beyond the immediate tactical considerations of using or countering the Jeep on the battlefield. German military planners understood that the vehicle's widespread deployment would enable rapid troop movement, enhanced reconnaissance capabilities, and efficient supply chains, fundamentally altering the pace and scope of modern mechanized warfare. The Jeep's presence on the battlefield allowed Allied units to respond swiftly to shifting circumstances, execute complex maneuvers across diverse terrain, and maintain operational cohesion even under extreme stress. Every inspection of the vehicle's components revealed an almost obsessive attention to detail, reflecting a design philosophy in which every nut, bolt, and joint contributed to an overarching goal: maximizing utility while minimizing the risk of catastrophic failure. Beyond the immediate technical insights, the German engineers began to grasp the broader operational philosophy that had produced such a formidable machine. They saw that American military doctrine had been inseparably linked to industrial capacity, with strategic planning taking into account not just battlefield tactics but the ability to sustain prolonged campaigns across vast geographies. The Jeep, in this sense, was both a tool and a symbol, a reminder that modern warfare depended as much on the ability to produce, transport, and maintain equipment as it did on the skill of soldiers or the cunning of commanders. The figure of 640,000 Jeeps became emblematic of a new kind of military thinking, one in which industrial supremacy could dictate the course of campaigns and, ultimately, the fate of nations. The Germans, traditionally proud of their own engineering and logistical capabilities, found themselves forced to reevaluate their assumptions about the interplay between technology, production, and strategy. In examining the Jeep, they were not merely studying a captured vehicle but analyzing the very mechanics of American war-making, understanding that the United States' capacity to field and sustain an enormous, flexible fighting force was as lethal as any weapon in its arsenal. This realization, stark and unavoidable, forced a reckoning with the limitations of German production under wartime constraints and illuminated the extent to which the outcome of the war would hinge on industrial as well as military ingenuity. By the time the examination was concluded, the German mechanics had internalized a profound lesson about the scale, efficiency, and foresight that defined American military-industrial capability. The Jeep had revealed not only the technical competence of a single vehicle but the strategic vision of an entire nation, one that had leveraged its industrial might to project force across two continents with unprecedented speed and reliability. In understanding the production and deployment of 640,000 vehicles, the Germans came to appreciate that victory in modern warfare was no longer solely the domain of battlefield heroics or tactical brilliance; it was inextricably linked to the capacity to innovate, manufacture, and sustain operations at a continental scale. The captured Jeep thus became a symbol of the profound shift in warfare that characterized the mid-20th century, a conflict where industrial power, logistical sophistication, and technological insight converged to create decisive advantages. Each bolt and axle examined by the German mechanics was a reminder of the interconnectedness of strategy, production, and battlefield effectiveness, illustrating that a nation's ability to organize and sustain its military apparatus could outweigh traditional notions of individual skill or localized superiority. The Jeep was more than a vehicle; it was a manifesto of American ingenuity and resilience, a tangible representation of a war effort that spanned continents and theaters, reflecting a commitment to mobility, reliability, and industrial-scale production that Germany, despite its formidable engineering tradition, could not match under the pressures of total war. In the aftermath of their examination, the German engineers carried with them not only technical observations but also a sobering recognition of the strategic realities imposed by industrial might, a lesson that underscored the inseparability of engineering, logistics, and national power in determining the outcome of global conflict. It was a realization that, even in defeat, would resonate far beyond the immediate context of the captured Jeep, influencing post-war military thought, vehicle design, and the understanding of how mechanized warfare would shape the future of nations for generations to come. The German mechanics who first laid eyes on a captured Allied Jeep during World War II could hardly have anticipated the monumental insight that this single vehicle would provide into the logistical, tactical, and industrial prowess of the United States military, a realization that would fundamentally reshape their understanding of modern mechanized warfare and leave an indelible mark on the collective mindset of German engineering and military assessment for the remainder of the conflict. At first glance, the Jeep appeared to be a modest, unassuming four-wheeled vehicle, a simple utility car, yet as the mechanics approached it with the meticulous attention to detail for which German engineers were renowned, they quickly began to recognize that this was no ordinary machine. It embodied an entire philosophy of war, a marriage of efficiency, versatility, and mass production that Germany had struggled to match despite its own industrial sophistication and the technical brilliance of its automotive and military engineering programs. The moment they began to inspect the chassis, the frame, the drivetrain, and the innovative suspension system, a dawning realization began to emerge. The Jeep was not merely a vehicle built for a single engagement or a localized battlefield advantage, it was a product of strategic foresight designed to operate effectively across multiple theaters, spanning continents and climates. From the frozen European plains to the deserts of North Africa, the dense forests of France, and even potentially the jungles of the Pacific. Each bolt, nut, joint, and lever within its carefully crafted design spoke to a philosophy of utility in which simplicity, durability, and ease of maintenance were prioritized over mechanical complexity or ostentation, a principle that allowed the Allies to field an unprecedented number of vehicles while keeping logistical burdens manageable and maintenance demands minimal even in the most remote or hostile environments. The German mechanics, trained to recognize precision, were impressed by the Jeep's innovative use of lightweight yet durable steel, the compact yet powerful inline-four engine, the reliability of its drivetrain, and the resilience of its suspension system, all of which combined to produce a machine capable of carrying troops, supplies, and even light weaponry over terrain that would have challenged more traditional vehicles, revealing a level of thoughtful design and practical foresight that spoke volumes about the Americans. Approach to mechanized mobility. As they traced the stamped serial numbers and studied the assembly points, they began to understand that what they were examining was not merely a vehicle, but a representation of industrial might, a tangible expression of a nation's capacity to mobilize and sustain a war effort on a scale previously unseen in history, with the figure of 640,000 Jeeps serving as a staggering metric of both production efficiency and strategic planning, a number that underscored the industrial power behind the Allied war machine. The Germans recognized that the Jeep's significance lay not in any individual engineering marvel, but in its replicability, the ability to manufacture hundreds of thousands of these vehicles, all consistent in quality, all capable of performing under the harshest conditions, and all easily reparable by soldiers in the field, represented an advantage that no single piece of advanced technology or isolated tactical innovation could match. Each feature of the Jeep, from its four-wheel drive capability to its simple leaf-spring suspension, from the straightforward yet effective engine design to the clever use of interchangeable parts, reflected not only mechanical ingenuity but a deep understanding of the strategic imperatives of global warfare, the need to move troops and supplies rapidly, to maintain operational flexibility, and to ensure that logistical support could keep pace with the fast-moving and geographically dispersed theaters of combat. The German mechanics, who had themselves been trained in the discipline of engineering and accustomed to the meticulous precision of German automotive design, were struck by the contrast. Whereas German vehicles often prioritized specialized performance or technological sophistication, the Jeep prioritized universality, ease of use, and adaptability, a philosophy that revealed a fundamental difference in military-industrial thinking between the two nations, one that placed a premium on mass utility over individual technical complexity. The examination revealed not only the brilliance of the vehicle itself but the broader operational and strategic vision that had guided its creation, a vision in which industrial production, design simplicity, and battlefield adaptability were intertwined, allowing the United States to maintain a mechanized force capable of operating effectively across two continents and multiple theaters of war simultaneously. This realization was profound. The Jeep was more than just a machine, it was a symbol of American logistical foresight, industrial capacity, and strategic planning, demonstrating that victory in modern warfare depended as much on the ability to sustain and mobilize forces as on battlefield tactics or individual heroism. The German mechanics came to see that the sheer volume of production, the standardization of parts, and the consideration given to field repairability allowed the Allies to maintain operational momentum in a way that the Germans, despite their own technical skill, could not easily counter, particularly under the strain of Allied bombing campaigns that had begun to cripple German industrial output. As they disassembled components, measured tolerances, and studied construction techniques, they recognized that the Jeep was a product of iterative refinement, informed by both peacetime engineering expertise and wartime necessity, a testament to the way in which the Americans had harnessed their industrial base, workforce, and material resources to produce a vehicle that could meet a wide range of tactical and logistical demands without compromising reliability. The German engineers saw the implications of this production philosophy clearly. The war was no longer fought solely with soldiers, tanks, or artillery, it was fought with production lines, factory organization, and the ability to coordinate a national industrial effort at an unprecedented scale, and the Jeep, as a tangible outcome of this effort, became the symbol of a new form of military power, one in which industrial capacity was weaponized as effectively as any tank or fighter plane. The realization that 640,000 vehicles could be deployed, maintained, and operated efficiently across multiple continents forced a re-evaluation of traditional metrics of military strength, highlighting the critical role of logistics, industrial strategy, and standardization in determining the outcome of large-scale conflicts, and making clear to the German mechanics that technical skill alone was insufficient to counter an opponent who had mastered the integration of engineering, production, and operational planning into a coherent warfighting strategy. In this single vehicle, they saw the culmination of a national approach that combined foresight, innovation, and relentless efficiency into a force multiplier, demonstrating that mobility, reliability, and adaptability could be harnessed at a scale that fundamentally altered the dynamics of modern warfare, making the captured Jeep not only a mechanical object of study but a strategic revelation that illuminated the intersection of industrial might, engineering ingenuity, and operational effectiveness on a continental scale, a lesson that would resonate long after the war itself, shaping post-war thinking in both military and civilian engineering domains and leaving an enduring mark on the understanding of how modern conflicts could be waged and won. As the German mechanics continued their meticulous inspection of the captured Allied Jeep, their appreciation for the subtle genius behind its design deepened, revealing layers of strategic and industrial insight that extended far beyond the vehicle's mechanical components and into the broader realm of modern warfare. Every detail they examined, from the placement of the engine components to the articulation of the suspension, from the simplicity of the drivetrain to the robustness of the chassis, demonstrated a meticulous attention to practicality and efficiency, a design philosophy rooted in the understanding that vehicles in wartime conditions had to endure extreme abuse, unpredictable terrain, and the pressures of rapid operational deployment without failure. Unlike many German military vehicles, which often emphasized technological sophistication or specialized performance metrics, the Jeep emphasized universality, reliability, and repairability, traits that would allow even minimally trained personnel to maintain and operate it effectively in the field. The mechanics were struck by how the Americans had ingeniously balanced the competing demands of power, weight, durability, and simplicity, resulting in a vehicle that could carry troops, tow artillery, transport supplies, and perform reconnaissance, all while being simple enough to mass-produce and maintain with limited resources. The realization began to dawn that this vehicle was more than a mechanical tool, it was a tactical and strategic force multiplier, a tangible representation of the way industrial capacity and strategic foresight could transform a relatively small number of human operators into a coordinated, highly mobile, and resilient fighting force. The meticulous design choices, such as the use of interchangeable parts, standardized engine components, and modular construction, reflected a level of foresight that extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Each decision embodied the understanding that maintaining operational momentum across multiple continents, from the beaches of Normandy to the deserts of North Africa and the Pacific Islands, required not only disciplined soldiers but also a vehicle fleet that could withstand wear and tear, resist breakdowns, and be quickly repaired under austere conditions. The German mechanics began to appreciate the full scale of what they were witnessing, the figure of 640,000 jeeps was not a simple number but a strategic declaration, evidence of an industrial strategy that allowed the United States to sustain large-scale operations simultaneously across multiple theaters, giving Allied forces unprecedented flexibility and resilience in their campaigns. Every aspect of the Jeep, from its high ground clearance to its simple but effective four-wheel drive system, demonstrated a practical understanding of terrain adaptability that enabled forces to respond rapidly to shifting circumstances, outmaneuver enemies, and maintain supply lines over areas that would have crippled less thoughtfully engineered vehicles. The German engineers noted that the Americans had effectively weaponized their industrial base. Mass production became a strategic asset, allowing them to overwhelm adversaries not necessarily through superior technology alone but through sheer numerical and operational advantage. The Jeep, in this sense, was emblematic of a new era of warfare, where industrial power and mechanical reliability became as decisive as tactical ingenuity and battlefield courage. In examining the Jeep, the Germans realized that the United States had created a self-reinforcing system. The more vehicles were produced, the more mobile and resilient the army became. The more mobile the army, the more opportunities existed for tactical innovation. The more tactical innovation, the greater the strategic impact, all supported by a relentless industrial output that ensured the continuous replacement and replenishment of both material and human resources. Beyond its practical military applications, the Jeep also revealed the philosophical underpinnings of American engineering during the war, a commitment to standardization, simplicity, and scalability, principles that allowed for rapid production, ease of training, and operational consistency across all theaters. This contrasted sharply with German engineering, which often emphasized complex technology that required specialized knowledge for maintenance and repair, a limitation that became increasingly apparent as Allied bombing campaigns disrupted production and stretched supply chains. The captured Jeep, therefore, was both a marvel of design and a harbinger of the evolving nature of modern conflict, illustrating that technological brilliance alone was insufficient to secure victory without the organizational, industrial, and logistical frameworks necessary to sustain operations on a global scale. As the mechanics disassembled each component, tested tolerances, and noted the thoughtful simplicity of the design, they were forced to confront a broader truth: the Americans had mastered the integration of engineering, production, and strategy, producing not only a vehicle but a system of mobility that allowed them to project power efficiently, sustain operations over immense distances, and respond to unforeseen challenges with remarkable speed and effectiveness. In recognizing these factors, the Germans began to understand that the war itself had entered a new dimension, one in which industrial strategy, mass production, and standardization were as critical to success as infantry tactics, artillery coordination, and armored warfare. The Jeep, with its robust yet simple design, standardized components, and remarkable reliability, became a lens through which they could observe and measure the extraordinary organizational and industrial capabilities of the United States, illuminating how a single vehicle type could contribute so decisively to the operational, tactical, and strategic superiority of an entire army. This insight was staggering. The Germans saw that while individual acts of bravery, technological innovation, and battlefield tactics remained important, the ability to sustain, equip, and mobilize an army on a continental and intercontinental scale had emerged as the defining factor in modern warfare, and the captured Jeep, in its unassuming frame, had revealed this reality with absolute clarity. By the end of their examination, the German mechanics had absorbed not only the technical marvels of the vehicle itself but also the profound strategic lesson embedded within its existence, that modern conflict was as much a contest of industrial organization and foresight as it was a contest of arms, and that the production of 640,000 reliable, versatile, and easily maintained vehicles represented a decisive advantage that could not be overcome by technology or tactics alone. In essence, the Jeep had transformed from a simple tool into a symbol, a tangible manifestation of American industrial might, strategic planning, and engineering philosophy, a revelation that forced a fundamental reassessment of what it meant to wage war in an era defined by mechanization, mass production, and global-scale logistics, and one that would leave a lasting imprint on both German understanding and the broader historical narrative of World War II.